Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya.
Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today we have a philosophy video and we have a very beautiful topic that I personally like a lot and that I try to follow myself, which is Bhakti Yoga. So we have already discussed in the past the meaning of yoga. We have discussed several sources where the yoga is coming from. So we might relate a little bit to those topics in order to get a more clear vision or understanding of what Bhakti is. So in order to understand Bhakti, I wanted to discuss a very beautiful story, which is also a little bit tragic because it's actually a war. So it was a story about 5,000 years ago. It was maybe more than 5,000 years ago. Before India became India, it was called Bharat. So it was the story of the Mahabharat. So it's the story of the greatest Bharat. And in this Mahabharat, there was a big war happening in between two sides, and they were actually family. So it was the sides of the Kurus and the side of the Pandavas. So the Pandavas, they were like the righteous men, they were like the proper men of society, and the Kurus, they were like the corrupted politicians, people who want just things for themselves, selfish, dirty mind people, so they wanted to rule society. So there was a war in between the Kurus and the Pandavas. And they were actually family. So the Pandavas and the Kurus and the Pandavas, they were related. So it's kind of a long story why they were family and why they were fighting. But basically they were fighting just to rule society, to rule the whole kingdom of Bharat. And in these righteous men, in the Pandavas, there was this man called Arjuna. And Arjuna was friends with Krishna. So Krishna is in that story. So Arjuna, he was the highest man of society. Talking about mentality, talking about attitude, it was a very righteous man. Whatever we can perceive as a really good man of society. So it was Arjuna. And then Arjuna, he was ready to fight. He was a big warrior. All the Pandavas and the Kurus, they were actually warriors. Before politicians or rulers, they were actually warriors. So Arjuna told Krishna, "Hey Krishna, please, why don't you drive me to the center of the battlefield before the war? I want to meditate. I want to see a little bit I want to see everything." So Krishna was the chariot man. He was driving the horses. So Krishna told him, "Okay, Arjuna, I'll take you to the middle of the battlefield." So Krishna drove Arjuna to the middle of the battlefield. It was a massive battlefield, huge battlefield with hundreds of thousands of men. And there was a space in the middle, of course. So Arjuna went there, and then he was standing in the middle of the battlefield, and then he was looking to the Kurus, and then he saw all his families, his grandfather was there, many of his cousins, and then he looked to the other side, and then he saw his brothers, and he saw so many of his family members, so many men of society with families, and then he just collapsed in the middle of the battlefield, and he said, "Oh Krishna, how can I fight? How can I fight? It's my family. How can I fight my grandfather? I can't do this, I think I'll just better go to the forest and I'll just try to stay in the forest, very simple, and I'll just give the kingdom to the Kurus." So because of Arjuna's reaction, Krishna started to tell Arjuna. He started to say, "Arjuna, I really get what you're saying, but I actually think in a different way." And when Krishna started to tell Arjuna what he thought about the whole situation, that's one of the most important conversations from the ancient India that is still impacting our times. because that conversation in between Krishna and Arjuna is called the Bhagavad Gita, which is a very famous book that you can find translated and also interpreted in many languages by so many different authors. And still until now is one of the most important books when it comes to yoga, spirituality, just connection to something higher. So it's a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. It's called the Bhagavad Gita. So Gita means the sun. I think I have explained it in another video, but in case you didn't watch that video, Bhagavad Gita, so Gita means song, and Bhagavad means Bhagavan, like the God person. So it was the song of God that he was talking to Arjuna. And in that song, it is explained what Bhakti is. So that's why I wanted to bring a little bit of the story. So I'm not going to go into the story too much. I'm not going to tell details. I just wanted to mention that conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, because Krishna talks about what Bhakti is. And that's the topic of today's video, no? So Bhakti, in the definition of Krishna and in most of the Shastras or scriptures from the ancient times, where yoga comes from, they explain that Bhakti is not just devotion towards things. When you do things with devotion, no? Like for example, when you cook to your family, if you're in a good mood, no? Sometimes we're cooking and we're thinking like, oh my God, I have to cook again. But when we do it with love, when we do something with love to someone else, there is some devotion in there. So it's very similar. So it's not just devotion towards things, but it's love. Love to God. Like the love that we feel to the people that we love, the love that we feel to our partner, the love that we feel to our, pet, the love that we feel for our things or for our practices. So that love that is towards the absolute reality, towards God or towards however you want to see that highest thing, if it exists for you. And if it doesn't exist for you, then you don't really need to think about it. But for the one who thinks that there is something higher, Bhakti is when you try to create a connection with that highest entity or reality based on love and devotion. So you do practices that are directing your mind or consciousness towards a more peaceful, loving connection with reality. It might be nature. No, we might have a loving connection with nature, or we might have a loving connection with something else. But that's Bhakti. It's a loving connection that we have towards that absolute reality or that highest thing, how we see it. So Bhakti is basically the way of love. It's not the way of intellectual. You don't want to get into the absolute conclusion by intellectual, or it's not also not having a connection with that reality. That's not Bhakti. Bhakti is when you have that connection based on love with the absolute reality. So Bhakti is nothing but the science and the path of love and devotion. So yeah, a little bit of this topic. We're not going too deep. We're just trying to touch on the surface some of the most important topics in the yoga world, like Bhakti. So today's topic was Bhakti. I really hope you learned something from the video. I hope to see you soon. That is soon going to Deutschland, and then I'm waiting myself to go. So I hope to see you very soon, and thank you again for watching. Goodbye.